China plans to lift tariffs on American agricultural goods. Soybean farmers can make plans for a better harvest. And Michigan Agricultural Commodities Chris Betts has your market report. I'm Janelle Brose, and this is Farm News 5.
Farm News 5 is brought to you by Ford.
Chinese tariffs on U.S. agricultural goods, including pork and soybeans, will be lifted, according to Chinese state media reports. Tariffs had been levied on U.S. pork 3 different times since April, increasing the duty to 72%. Mary Kalpinski, Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Pork Producers Association, calls the announcement welcome news.
Just having the decrease in the tariffs, hopefully we'll see more pork that's imported into China. They are dealing with a disease, African swine fever, which some experts say has taken out about 50% of their hogs. And it's a disease that doesn't affect humans, it only affects pigs, and it really causes death in pigs. And so it's something that we don't have in this country, we don't want in this country, but China is dealing with it and has been for about 14 months. And the Chinese consumer loves pork. They eat a lot more pork over there than we do here. And so they're looking for a product, they're looking for sources of it, and we would love to be that source in the United States. Economists say that in 2018, pork producers were getting an added $8 per pig because of the demand that there was over in China. And since we've had all of these trade disputes, that demand has diminished, and we never know whether we're going to be shipping product to China or not. So any way that we can open up those markets is greatly appreciated, and a trade agreement with them would be awesome.
If you want a car from a company that's been building them for 115 years, get a Ford. If you want a car with driver assist technology, get a Ford. You're gonna want a Ford.
Prior to China's announcement, MPPA members were in the nation's capital extolling the benefits of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement and the importance of ratifying the new NAFTA.
Canada and Mexico are a huge market. I mean, with the location of the two countries, it makes it easy to import pork into their countries. They actually make up about 40% of the exports of pork in this country. And Mexico is our #1 market on volume, the second market on value, and China is the 5th largest market, I believe, on volume, and the 4th largest on value. So, you know, when you look at some of the differences that those countries like, Mexico eats a lot of hams. They eat a lot more ham than we do in this country. So it's a good use for products that aren't being fully utilized in this country. And, you know, it has a huge impact on the pork industry.
Meanwhile, the USDA has announced updates to swine slaughter inspection rules, the first such changes in close to 5 decades.
It's actually kind of nice because the Clemens facility was one of their test pilots. They had several, I think it was 5 across the country that they were testing out this system at. And so I guess with Clemens being a new plant, they decided they would test it out there. And so it's gone really well. I think it helps the plant out, it helps them with their flow a little bit better. But all of the meat and all of the hogs are still inspected, 100% is inspected. And so it's going to only improve the system. It's not going to cause any harm.
Do you understand how the new GAMPs apply to you? Compliance with the GAMP is critical to benefiting from the protections of the Michigan Right to Farm Act. Learn more at fosterswift.com.
$19 additional per acre. That's how much producers can earn by reducing soybean harvest losses this fall. According to Michigan State University Extension, there are several things producers can do to get the most out of their 2019 soybean harvest. First, inspect and repair the cutting parts of the header and make sure all knife sections are sharp and tight and all guards are properly aligned. Once soybeans reach 14 to 15% moisture, producers can begin harvest operations. MSU Extension recommends maintaining ground speed at 3 miles per hour or less and setting the speed of the reel to run 10 to 25% faster than the ground speed under good conditions. It's also important to stop the combine periodically to check the amount and type of loss that is occurring.
Because we really want to focus on gathering losses, because that's where 90% of your soybean yield loss comes from, or harvest loss, we would recommend that producers drive into a representative area in the field and then back up about 20 feet, turn the combine off, climb down, and take some type of 1 foot square. I use PVC pipe because it's easy for me to work with, and you just throw that randomly across the head. You try to want to avoid where the feeder house is. So either side of the feeder house, you want to throw it multiple times. At our harvest field days, because we want to get a representative sample, we're throwing that 10 different times. We'll have 10 different squares. Okay, then you come over to where you found it, and you just get down and you count the number of loose beans that would be in the square, individual seed, but you also want to count the number of pods that are there that have beans in them, or if you've got stubble that has some low-hanging pods that didn't get cut. Those count as well, because those are losses. They didn't get into the grain tank, they're not going to go to market. So that's the way to think about it. Anything that's in that square that's not going to go to market, we need to count. There's a really important rule of thumb with the soybeans that we grow in Michigan typically, is that if you've got 4 beans per square foot, you've lost 1 bushel per acre. Just 4 beans per square foot equals 1 bushel per acre. And we've seen with our harvest days, we've seen losses as high as 2.5 bushels per acre.
Farmers are invited to learn more on how to manage soybean harvest losses at the Soybean Harvest Equipment Field Day, Tuesday, September 24th in Burlington, Michigan. Contact the Allegan County MSU Extension Office to register for the free meeting.
The Michigan Soybean Promotion Committee is devoted to investing soybean farmer checkoff dollars to address grower concerns. We focus our efforts on production research, market development, and outreach. Learn more at michigansoybean.org.
Tim Rogers with Farm News Media was in Michigan's thumb this week for dry bean harvest with the McConaughey family and early dig sugar beet harvest with Sylvester Farms. The Cab Cam is brought to you by Tri-County Equipment.
Beets is probably the crop that I put my heart into most. My dad and I always joke around how like corn and soybeans, they're just a rotation crop, just a cover crop. And yeah, there's been years where you made good money on them, but and that was kind of an oddity, especially when I was growing up. It was always beets. We focus our farm on how we prepare things and cover crops, and we always focus on beets on our own personal farm. I think a lot of guys are that way.
We also stopped in Deckerville and visited with the McConaughey brothers.
We've had John Deere combines for as long as I can remember. I grew up riding an 8820 with my Uncle Dave and just loved it. Since I've been old enough to run a combine, it's been all rotor combines and very similar setup from 10 years ago to now. The rotors are very similar. The combines and controls and options and everything are very advanced from what they were 10 years ago, but the rotor is very similar and we love it. It does all the crops that we need it to do. It does a great job. We can make adjustments on the fly easily, and they're very, very reliable. I have very little downtime with this combine.
To view the entire Tri-County Equipment Cab Cams, visit the Michigan Farm Bureau channel on YouTube or the MFB Facebook page. And now with a look at the latest market activity, here is Michigan Ag Commodities' Chris Betts.
Thanks, Janelle. A more subdued tone for the week as Midwest weather remains non-threatening for late developing crops. While additional rain would be beneficial across the belt, temperatures are well above average and limiting risk of overnight freezes. Corn and soybean basis are feeling pressure as end users have secured coverage to get to harvest time. Ethanol margins have improved some of late, but production remains under pressure. Chinese and U.S. trade officials met this week for low-level talks in preparation for higher-level talks in October. Comments by Ag Secretary Perdue this week reinforced that the two sides are still far apart on key issues such as technology transfer and intellectual property rules. Beans are coming into some long-term technical resistance since tariffs were put in place, which may present a pricing opportunity for those needing to move harvest time bushels. For more market information, go to michag.com. With Michigan Agricultural Commodities, I'm Chris Betts.
For more news and video, visit MichiganFarmNews.com and the Michigan Farm Bureau channel on YouTube. With Farm News 5, I'm Janelle Brose. Have a great week of farming.